Today is February 23rd, 2010, and we're visiting with Martha Nation to talk about her experiences as a rural school teacher. Tell us, where and when did you teach school, Martha?
I taught at Eagle number 3 in Blackhawk County, and this was right after I graduated from high school in 1931.
Do you know what township that was?
It's probably Eagle Township.
Eagle Township. Oh, sure. Okay, Eagle number 3. All right.
Eagle County.
And how long were you there?
1 year.
And what was your name when you taught school?
My name was Martha Loonan,
Oh, I should have known that.
and my parents were Martha Elizabeth and Lloyd Loonan.
And that was spelled L-O...
O-N-A-N.
Tell me about your room and board arrangements.
I stayed at home. This was 3 miles east of where I lived. So it was very handy.
And what did you wear to school?
I wore just ordinary clothes, what I had worn to school probably in the summer.
Did you have the normal training in high school?
No,
So,
I took just 1 summer right after I graduated, and we had rural school management and rural school methods.
and was that at Iowa Normal?
Iowa State Teachers.
Oh, that was, okay. What about your winter clothing? Would that have been much different?
Well, except when I rode the horse, then I had on bib overalls, and I imagine I changed it after I got to school.
Okay.
And the reason I was riding the horse, in the spring, it was very muddy, and in the morning it was always frozen, but it became very hard to drive. The ruts were so deep, and so I rode the horse the 3 miles.
So if the roads were good, did you still take horse? Or were the roads never good?
Oh yeah, I drove a car most of the time, but
Okay.
that was in the spring.
Okay. Do you remember what time you'd leave for school in the morning?
It was probably about an hour before school started,
Do you remember what time that would have been?
about 8 o'clock.
And you said you were 3 miles from your school.
Yes.
Did anyone ever go with you?
No.
Do you remember anything special about your trips to school?
Well, the first day I rode the horse, I was picking wildflowers. They were so pretty.
Oh.
And the horse went home. So my mother was very anxious about me. She didn't know what had happened.
What did you do then?
Walked home.
Were you late that morning for school, Martha?
No, this was on the way home.
Oh, okay. Very good. Tell me about your schoolhouse.
It was just the regular 1-room school. It was white, and inside we had a place in the back of the schoolroom, we had a place for our lunch pails and the clothing that they wore, and also for our pail of water with the 1 dipper for everybody.
Tell me about the playground.
We didn't have any equipment at all. The school had been empty for 10 years, and then they decided that they would, this was a Catholic community, and these were the Protestant children that lived in the community. And so they had closed the school, and then they decided to open it again.
Did you have any balls for them to play baseball with? Or?
They brought some of their own, and I probably did too. I had 5 brothers and sisters, so,
Do you remember any trees in the playground?
yes, we did have trees.
Would you say lots?
Oh, not lots, but it was pretty,
Was there a flagpole?
no,
No flagpole. But a couple of outbuildings?
yes. And then a shed at the back for the fuel.
What kind of fuel was it?
We had coal and wood,
Was that your job?
yes.
So what did you do before the children arrived?
Well, I made up the fire, or stoked it anyway, and looked around to see if everything was in place.
When did the children arrive?
Well, some of them arrived early. They like to come early. They all were there, well, before it started.
Do you remember what time the school day began?
9,
And they weren't tardy ever.
no,
Talk about the interior of the building. What was it like inside?
well, I described the back of the room, and it had windows, tall windows, and no curtains. And the first time it rained real hard, we found out that we didn't have any lighting. We didn't have any lamps of any kind.
What did you do then if it was so dark inside?
We looked out the window, I imagine we talked about the storm and the clouds and so on.
Did you have a piano?
No, we had a pump organ,
Could you play it?
yes.
Was that something they were looking for when they hired you, or was it just lucky?
No, probably just lucky.
Did you do a lot of music?
We had opening exercises, and then I gave lessons once in a while, just simple lessons.
Chalkboard?
Yes, we did have. And when we went, we had one piece of chalk and one eraser. So we
How
had-
long does the one piece of chalk supposed to last you?
I don't know, but the next day we got some.
Oh, okay. So you had some chalk. What other supplies did your school have?
Well, we had seats for 2 people to sit in, and we had a recitation bench, and the teacher's desk, and a pot-bellied stove. That was about it, and the organ.
Did the children have slates?
I don't remember that they did, I don't think so.
How about books?
No,
There were no books.
not when we got there, unusual. The superintendent had said that everything was in order, so I didn't do anything about books, but I had my own. He came the first day and found out that the students didn't have their books. Nobody had told them to go and get them. So he loaned us some just for the day. And then the next day, they came with the books and other supplies.
Where did the children go to buy their books?
Hudson,
So the children had to furnish their own books.
as far as I remember,
And what else did they have to furnish?
well, their paper and pens or pencils and colors.
Were there things that you furnished?
Well, I brought things from home, yes.
Do you remember what kind of things those would have been?
Balls for them for recess, and books to read to them, and of course music.
Let's talk about the beginning of the school day. You said you had opening exercises. Do you remember what sort of things you did for opening exercises?
Well, we usually sang a song, and then I read to them for maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Let's talk about the structure of the school day lessons. Or, we haven't talked about how many children you had and how many in each grade. Maybe that would be a good, or maybe it kind of works in together here.
Okay. I had one boy in first grade, a girl in second grade, and 3 students in fourth grade, and 1 in sixth grade to begin with. Then March 1st, which was moving day for farmers, 2 of the girls left, and I received a kindergarten girl from the neighbor and 5 in another family. So I had 10 at the end.
Do you remember lessons that you taught, how the day would go, what you started with, which age group you'd start with?
I'm not, I had never been in a country school, by the way. And of course, in the summer, they didn't have school. So the county superintendent came out the very first day and helped set up the schedule for me. I did have a schedule worked out, but he helped me with it. We usually started with the youngest ones and then had them work on worksheets and then had the others.
Where did you get your worksheets?
I made them up myself. And then Lattice had a very good book that had a lot of things of that kind, things that you could trace and things that they could color. And
Did they do the tracing or did you do the tracing?
I did it.
So what kind of work would have been on their worksheets?
It would be math, probably.
Was there a lot of different experiences between the different grade levels, or would it have been reading for first grade and reading for second grade, or were there differences in curriculum for your different grade levels?
Yeah, yes, they would have mostly reading and doing a little printing. And then the older ones had math and reading and spelling and geography, I'm sure.
But the younger ones didn't have math?
Just beginning math.
Okay.
I was very pleased that the first grader did learn how to read during the year.
Now you mentioned moving day, March 1st, influenced the difference, change, fluctuation in size. Was there anything else during the year? Or did your enrollment stay pretty consistent except for March 1st?
No, I had 6 during the first part and then 10. And the reason I had the kindergarten child, I rode to school on the horse one day, and it was snowing a little when I left, but it was snowing a lot by the time I got to school. And the neighbor man, who was Catholic, came down, and I stayed with him a whole week. When I went to pay for it, he said, could my daughter go to kindergarten? And so I had her, and the Catholic school nearby didn't have kindergarten.
Would you say that was common at the time that the children would come to country school for kindergarten and then go to their Catholic school for the other grades?
No, I don't think so.
Do you remember any lessons specifically, anything that was memorable to you?
No, not really. It was interesting to have 3 people in the 4th grade and then later 4 people in the 4th grade. That was a little easier. I also allowed the students to speak up if they had an idea when we were talking about geography and history and so on.
What did you like teaching the most?
Mostly reading. I always enjoyed reading and math both.
Were there any subjects you didn't like to teach?
Not that I know of.
Did you ever have any helpers?
No.
Let's think about your discipline and rules that you had for the classroom.
Well, they raised their hand if they wanted to talk, and also if they needed to go to the outhouse. I don't remember especially doing anything.
Would you say that discipline was never a problem?
I don't remember that it was. Of course, that was a long time ago.
How about if you were working with a group or one child and somebody's at their seat working on something, they have a question, did they just have to wait or could they interrupt you?
They could raise their hand.
Let's think about lunchtime. Were there any special procedures for lunchtime to get ready?
No. I took my lunch the same as they did.
What was in their lunch boxes?
Sandwiches, and some of them I know brought cold egg sandwiches. And fruit
Where did you eat your lunch?
at the desks.
How long was lunchtime?
An hour.
Did they eat quickly to get outside?
Usually they did.
And what did they do at recess time?
Mostly they made up their own games because we didn't have any equipment outside.
Did they all play together? All 6 at first and then all 10?
Yes, pretty much. The little first grader, I remember, used to sit on my lap.
Oh. How about outside of school? Did you see your children very often?
No. They came, these people had gone to different places. They went to Hudson and they went to Orange, I think, to school. 2 of them had gone to country school. And one, of course, started. 2 of them started. So I didn't really see them, maybe at church, a couple of them, and in the grocery store.
Did the children have responsibilities for keeping the classroom up?
2 of the boys went to the neighbor to get the pail of water every day,
How far did they have to go?
about 1/4 of a mile. That was the same neighbor that I stayed with too, so he brought me down hot lunch the week I stayed there, which was nice.
What responsibilities did you have besides teaching? You had to stoke the fire, keep the fire going.
You were it.
You were the custodian.
Yes.
You kept the school clean.
Yes.
Do you know why this location was selected for the country school?
No, it hadn't been going for 10 years.
How would you compare your school to other schools at that time?
Well, the other country schools would be about the same, except most of them were larger. And then Hudson was a consolidated school at that time. That's where we all went to school.
And when you say we, you mean your family
Yes,
went to
right.
school in Hudson. So how did community politics affect the operation of your school?
Well, it was, would you say, the Catholic, the way it was set up. They had to have 6 students at least. And so one Catholic boy came to our school. The second day of school, he brought all his brothers and sisters. One of the girls was in 8th grade, one in 7th grade, and so on down. And that night, the priest came and said, "You can only have one sermon."
So you had several just the second day,
Yes,
and then he would let you have one.
yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if that would be politics, but it was the way it was set up.
Were the parents involved with your school?
No, not particularly. They all came the last day of school and brought a picnic lunch, which we ate outside.
You've already told me some things about your county superintendent, how he got things helped you line up your schedule for the day and was helping to get the school open. Anything else that we might find interesting about how the county superintendent helped?
He didn't come back then.
You never saw him again?
No, he didn't.
How about the school board?
Well, they were Catholic, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 of them. And I had to go around to each one to get my check signed each month. Oh,
Each
and-
one had to sign the check?
Yes, I don't know why, but sometimes they were out in the field, so
How much was your check, do you remember?
$60 a month, which was the good price at that time.
Were they the ones that hired you?
No, the superintendent, county superintendent did. My dad had known him, and so he had talked to him.
Did the school board have any choice on textbooks that you used?
Not that I know of.
Did your school have a library, Martha?
No,
What was your favorite part of the day?
I think the beginning of the day when everybody was fresh and anxious to learn.
Do you have a worst memory?
Well, I don't know if you'd call it worst, but right after Christmas vacation, the whole side of the whole front of the school was covered with ice, and I couldn't get in. And so one of the older brothers had brought his sister, and he went back home and got some things and opened the door.
What was the hardest thing you faced as a classroom teacher in a country school?
I think being all by yourself, and every once in a while I'd think, well, I have these 6 people or 10 people all by myself, and it was a little bit lonesome sometimes.
Why did you choose to teach?
When I was in high school, when I was a senior and about to graduate, one of the teachers was called away, and she had me teach the class. And I found that I could, without any preparation, I figured out what to do during that class. And I thought, well, maybe that would be a good choice. Actually, there was just the idea of teachers or secretaries or nurses at that time.
Or get married.
Right.
What benefits do you think we could learn today from country schools?
Smaller classes, for one thing. And they've been very good at taking tests. Maybe you might say they don't have as many choices of subjects and.
Today they don't, or in
Today.
Today.
Right. Now, is that what I wanted to say? I'm not sure.
That they had more choice in the country school, or there's more
No.
choice today?
More
There's
choice
more
today.
choice today.
Right.
What are the disadvantages of kids going to country school? Were there any?
Well, as you probably found out, they didn't have the materials to work with.
How did the country school day end?
I read to them usually. That was the one thing I like to do. And they just left. Well, they had little chores to do.
What kind of chores?
For one thing, empty the pail of water so it didn't freeze, and clean the blackboards, pick up the trash.
Would there have been much trash?
No, not really.
What did you do once you left school?
I went home and had chores at home.
Did you still have housekeeping chores and farm chores at home?
Not farm chores, but I did have housekeeping chores.
Can you think of major things that were happening in the world during your year of teaching?
No, I don't know.
What did your students call you?
Mrs. Nation?
Probably not Mrs. Nation. If you were
Oh, I'm
Miss
sorry.
Loonan?
I'm sorry. They didn't call me by my first name.
Was the Depression affecting the school?
Yes, I would think so.
In what ways?
Their clothing, for one thing.
Tell me more about that.
They wore the same clothes quite often for maybe the whole week. And they didn't talk about going places because there just wasn't. You just didn't go. I didn't either. We didn't go very much.
What special events were held at your school? You talked about the picnic at the end of the year.
That was it.
Let's talk more about that. What did you do at your end of the year picnic?
Well, they brought the food, of course, and it looked like there were men there as well as ladies. And the students had worked very hard at the end of the year to have a little program for them before we ate. And
Did
then
you?
They just took their things and went home.